Sitting very still, sitting in a symmetrical posture. Your back is pretty straight. Whether you're sitting on a seiza bench, a chair, a zafu, or a ganden, or just a zabuton. Hold very still without being rigid. If you find yourself shuffling around a little bit or wiggling, just be aware of that, and when you can, return to the stillness. It's not necessary, as I understand it, to maintain stillness. Just return to it. Just observe. If you are in the Zendo, please gather in front of the altar. And if you're on Zoom, please turn towards your computer screen and thank you. This evening is, of course, Wednesday, and is this the first day of the new year? It is. So Happy New Year, of course. We'll see how that goes. So perfect title for this evening's talk, and it isn't having anything to do with the new year, but it might for you. Last couple of talks, or at least the last talk, or maybe one talk ago, I started out with the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said, and I'm not sure what sutra or whatever this came from, but it's basically, I didn't say it in English, but our translation of that is pain is certain. Pain is certain. Suffering is optional. So this is using the language in such a way that talking about the three kinds of pain. There's the pain of pain, which is a broken leg or a toothache, a headache, open heart surgery. Pain. It's certain you're going to get some of that. The other one is a little bit more confusing, but it's very true. The pain of alternation, which we're right in the middle of something very maybe wonderful, pleasurable, and satisfying, and we start to worry about it's going to go away or won't last, or I won't be able to maintain it, or. So here we are in this wonderful situation, and we're still suffering because we're being threatened by impermanence. Just another way of talking about the first noble truths of suffering. Pain of pain, suffering. Pain of alternation, suffering. Pain of the composite, can't be avoided. Passion, aggression, and ignorance, the fuel of ego, to pull, push, and shut down, needs to be seen. So what does the Buddha say there? Train your mind. Observe what's happening rather than necessarily try to cover it up, push it away. Cover it up, ignorance, push it away, aggression, or redistribute the causation to those guys or that situation or that situation that happened 3 weeks ago. It is done with the awareness. It is done through consciousness. One part of consciousness that is very difficult to work with is the thinking process, because it's so clearly thoughts or feelings, emotions about something. So we're able to back away from, so to speak, something that is showing up, which is painful, and think about it, speculate about it, wonder about it, have all the questions that I mentioned yesterday in the talk I gave on wisdom. What, where, why, who, and I guess how is it? Sometimes spelled with a W. So we get into that labyrinth of otherness that has all kinds of crossroads and junctures and pathways, synapses, however you want to call it, in the mind stream, and we think and we evaluate and we conclude and we go back. We go. Is it re-go back? Is that it? Re-go back? No, we go back and we reevaluate something, and then we talk to our friends. We talk to this, and sometimes we talk to Sangha about it. And Sangha, quite interesting that not always, but quite often Sangha would just listen to you. Kind of disturbing to explain to something, telling you about what difficulty you're having, and they're just looking at you. Maybe they're listening. Maybe they're planning what they're going to say back, and then decide not to say it. Awareness. And we need to train our minds to prioritize the awareness over what is arising in it. Thoughts, memories, emotions, conclusions, prejudice, hopes, fears, and so on, all run by passion, aggression, and ignorance, more than likely. Takes a while, takes quite a while. Takes a very long time, it seems. And there are many teachings out there from the Madhyamaka Yogacara and different ways of approaching what the Buddha taught, what other teachers have said down through the centuries, including Dogen Zenji from the 13th century, various ways of by people who apparently have understood the deep teaching of the Buddha, various ways of approaching that, looking at that to further, I don't know, maybe enhance your confusion so that you can see, further enhance the difficulty, the suffering, the pain, so that you can see yourself, so you yourself can see what the Buddha saw. And what is that about? It's about clarity. You cannot find the clarity unless you look at the confusion. You have a simple statement maybe to make, but sometimes we keep looking for success, looking for the clarity, looking for we're getting somewhere. Sometimes people will say to me in the middle of an interview, how am I doing? I would say, are you meditating? And they say, not as much as I should. And I say, you're doing fine. Why would I say that to that person? Because they're aware that they're not meditating as much as they should. It's about awareness. It's not about success. Being aware, if you're meant to tumble in fall down the cliff and hit this boulder and that and break your leg on that branch or that limb and everything and fall right through the gates of nirvana, you won't be able to stop it. And you won't be able to create it. It's as if. It's as if. It's not something that actually occurs. It's as if. We're at. We're here. This is where we start. This is where we return. Well, return to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. If you're studying Buddhism, pain is certain, as he said, the Buddha, and suffering is optional. So does that mean you have a choice? I don't think he's necessarily saying that. He's just saying that if you look and see what this is, rather than jumping to a conclusion of shoving it away, to a conclusion of trying to end it or chop off its head, or blame someone else, blame yourself, blame anything to look away from the clarity that saw that situation in the first place into something else, consciousness only. Traditional teaching in the Yogacara and in other approaches to Buddhism, other schools of Buddhism, And when I say, don't conclude, I know you can't help but conclude. I say, don't push, pull, or divide. I know you can't help but do that. But by saying that, brings the awareness to that. If you're a meditator, it brings your awareness to how much you shut down, how much you blame. And it can feel more and more like failure to you. But it's about awareness, not about stopping the failure to get some success. That's more of a conventional, mundane approach to working with anything, the mind stream or anything else. Success. Although in the teachings, there's even supplication to talk about success on the path. Remember any of those?
Grant your blessings.
Grant your blessings. So there is a dynamic there about that. And what it is about is awareness of that rather than some kind of grasping or conclusion. It can be very, very difficult and frustrating, painful. Very necessary to have the three jewels as I see it. Not that it couldn't be done, couldn't be understood, couldn't be realized without it. There are other traditions that seems like that can happen there. There are spontaneous realizers, probably very few, who realize this just by being alive. They just suddenly tumble into that intense openness that is without a self and without an other. It's just consciousness only. Rare. I would appreciate some questions that take us all deeper into this. Let's go there. Thank you.
When you're bowing, so you said the topic for tonight was pain is certain, suffering is optional.
Yes, that's a quote of the Buddha.
So you also teach, or he taught, that life is suffering.
Yes.
So is this saying if suffering is optional, do we have a choice?
He's not talking about a choice, about choosing not to suffer. It's optional in that if you see what it is, if you see not the nerve ending pain, that's not going to go away. That kind of pain, the pain of pain is not optional. It's certain you're going to have the pain of pain. The optional part that he's talking about is just another way of talking about the First Noble Truth. We only have so many words, but we have an understanding that it's very difficult to support or contain with words without destroying the very thing we're trying to understand by covering it up with too many concepts, too much control, too much trying to control. So let's go further.
When you're bowing. So if suffering is optional.
It's a way of talking about it. It's saying that it's optional, not so much from the point of view you have a choice. I'm not saying you have a choice. I'm just repeating what the Buddha said and then endeavoring to talk about that in such a way that can help you or me or anyone else see the way this whole structure works. See the way that something arises. And the idea here is just observe, just be aware. But if you grasp at it, then you actually encourage and fuel the polarity that spins around and causes more spinning, more suffering, more pain, suffering, pain. He's trying to differentiate between just the nerve ending, the pain of pain, and the other kinds of pain, the pain of alternation, the pain of just thinking that you have some control over something, the pain of when you feel like you're failing, instead of just seeing that it's just simply that. It's just you wanted this to happen, you had an expectation, you've turned this, pulled that, shoved down on this, pulled this over this way, and it went out of balance. There was too much wind, there wasn't enough wind. It was too warm, it was too cold. all the conditions that we have no say-so about, we're endeavoring to work within that. So you do the best you can to get a field full of corn, whatever it may be, has been happening for centuries. And when that goes awry, it's the understanding that's necessary there. But dependent origination, not the ego that has failed, that is torturing him or herself because they didn't plan it right, or they didn't look ahead enough, or they didn't pray to their God enough. So it's about seeing the nature of dependent origination yourself. If you see this, don't blame anybody for anything, no matter how they treat you. So it doesn't mean you won't run away from them, get free of them, but you might even see if there's any way that they're presenting with their anger, their aggression, their accusation, their hatred, to see if they're getting rid of that because they don't like that feeling. They don't like how they feel, so they want to blame you for it. And is that successful? Relatively, it can be for a while. You can lower the heat on that, but it comes back around because it is circular. Or did I get close to the area you're asking about?
When you're vowing, I'm just thinking about when you teach, don't accept, don't reject, and don't look away. Then does suffering cease?
So when I teach, don't accept, don't reject, don't look away, I know you cannot do that. That the causes and conditions that have been arising within this body, mind, or this one are just ramping up. There's a momentum there that goes back into the illusion of time, the illusion of otherness that keeps this whole charade or this whole parade or this whole 3-act play going and going and going. It's when we push on it, pull on it, when we push it down, pull on it, explain or blame or analyze or do anything with it other than observe it, that it gives or distract ourselves from it either chemically or through some physical activity or mental activity up to and including chess. Not wrong. It's just ways of getting out of your life. What is happening in your life, the karma that is showing up in your life needs to be received, not judged or concluded or done have anything done with it. And that's what I'm saying. I'm asking you, suggesting you don't do that, knowing full well you're going to do that. But by putting some tension in that area, you see that you do not have a say-so. So what does this do? This doesn't help you change that. It doesn't help you become someone who doesn't receive. It helps you see there was no someone. It helps you see there was no one who was pushing, that the pushing is dependently arisen. And it can come, if you want a story about it, it can come from the 3rd century. There is no such thing as time. This is an illusion. And I'm teaching out of what I'm looking at, not just eyeballs, but what I'm seeing. And I'm encouraging you to see this too. I cannot give it to you. If you were able to open your spiritual hands, I might be able to help you in that way. But anytime someone comes this way, usually they're so covered up that I can't get through. Sometimes I whack them 1 or 5 times or 10 if it looks like I have permission. There are times when that doesn't work and the person goes away. Should they? I suppose. I don't know. Do what I can. It's not, I'm not failed at it so much as there's just the causes and conditions there are not providing me or anyone with any kind of explanation of it. It's just dependent origination. But when it takes on the coloring of personhood, it just looks like there's a story that we could figure out and get to, which you hadn't done it said, or hadn't done this. We do this all the time. Our sangha is flooded with poisonous stories about each other, gossip. And I've been accused of it too. And is it true? Yes. I'm a Dharma teacher. I'm not here to bullshit you. What does that mean? I'm not separate from you. You want me to act enlightened? You act enlightened. More?
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll try to calm down. Not very hard. Kisho, do you have your hands in Gasho?
Kishawang, you talked about the difficulty of being aware of thoughts.
Yes.
Do thoughts have a texture? And if they do they show up in one of the other five senses? Bhavan?
They seem to be, and I'm not trying to particularly avoid your question, but they seem to be textural. And there's an area in consciousness where emotions actually thoughts start to get very sticky. And this is when the differentiation between thoughts and emotions is very subtle. They look different, but then sometimes they are so enamored of each other. The support the emotions get from the thoughts and the support the thoughts get from the emotions to continue to create the fiction that there's someone who's thinking, the fiction, the illusion that there's someone who has feelings. This is untrue. There is no solid being anywhere. It doesn't say that there isn't some part of the illusion that's extremely unhappy or is suffering. Yes, suffering comes and goes and is dependent. So coming back to your question, I would say there probably is a textural dynamic happening there. I would think that it would be different with each person. Different with some people are function so completely emotional or intuitively that they would not even consider themselves to be thinking. They would even say that can't understand someone's being very, very clear and conceptual with very strong structures about whatever may be the Buddhist teachings, the teachings of whatever may be the five dharmas or the three own beings or the 12 links on the chain of existence. Pretty precise, conceptual, logical structure that some people just can't work with that so well. I was looking at the 12 links back in the 1970s, and even though I would read them over and over and over again, I could not understand. I could not understand how that was working, how that could possibly be a description of how consciousness works to support an individual or the illusion of the self. Was there a further question about that or more about that, or help me go deeper into it?
Kishawang.
Yes, sir.
So if there is no attendant emotions, how can we best observe thoughts? Is it even possible to observe be aware of the thoughts, and how, Bhavan?
So when you say, is it even possible, that part of consciousness that is failing at being able to observe the thoughts is consciousness, it's awareness. And so for one person, for you, or for Brian Perry, or for me, someone else, that whole area may show up differently. We may feel like, we may perceive there's a really strong ability to watch thoughts come and go, watch how they arise, watch how they hang around for a bit, and watch how they dissolve. And then others don't have no idea what you're even talking about, even though they've been meditating for 15 or 20 years. So more, Chisho, let's go there further if you can help me.
Kishawang, yeah, I mean, I'm asking about the difficulty. I face it a lot about just being able to observe thoughts come and go. I'm very quickly on the train of thoughts, so to say. Bye.
Good. So it's awareness. It's not about stopping thinking. It's not about any kind of accomplishment. It is about awareness. The thoughts are not yours. We don't produce thoughts. All of the sense fields, including the mind, that's differentiated because people think that, or have thought, or maybe they conclude that you can actually think things. But you can't. You can't actually smell things unless there's a fragrance or a odor.
Ondo bowing. What is the role of vulnerability in pain and suffering?
As I understand it, the role of vulnerability, if someone can be vulnerable, which would show up as not defending yourself or protecting yourself. My personal way of working with that, just in recent times, is when I'm accused of things. People have lately, in the last year or so, I've been accused of stuff and that I've done or said or how I've acted. And my experience of that is not to explain it, not to defend it. And when I do that, I realize that even though I have a kind of an understanding about it, that maybe someone can understand if I say that, I realize that I'm feeling vulnerable. And so I might just not explain it. Another time I experience the vulnerability more intensely by defending. You follow me? When you actually see that you're defending, that's when you might see the most vulnerability, because then you realize that doesn't work. More about it if you have it.
Window bowing, is vulnerability dependently originated?
Everything is. Anything that shows up has a singularity, a concept, vulnerability, a concept, enlightenment, a concept, suffering. Anything that shows up as something that is about something else is dependent nativism. If we want to continue to use words or concepts, which we're trying to do, you could say that consciousness is not dependently arisen. It doesn't appear. But the concept of consciousness is very dependently arisen, and it comes out of a lot of trying to look and see what is it that provides even the area for something to arise and drop away. Is there something there? I guess the traditional image that's often used is the sky. There's nothing there until something shows up in it. Then we realize there's a sky. The same is true with consciousness of the mind. It seems the image or the metaphor breaks down if we start to go into it with conceptual forceps.
William Bowen, you had said that you can't smell anything unless there's a scent to be smelled. When it comes to thought and mind,
Could you speak a little louder so I don't have to repeat what you're saying?
sure. You had mentioned earlier that smell comes from a scent that is already around you. Where does thought and mind come from?
Same place. The nose. Same place, it comes from itself. Everything comes from consciousness. The smell, the ears, the body, everything is consciousness only. It just shows up in so many different forms that some are like a human form, another is an eagle, golden eagle. Some forms show up as a thought about something that doesn't exist. Like a 15-foot something out here in the parking lot that is 15 feet in diameter. It's a basketball. It's in your mind. You could just as easily walk right out there and see it. It's possible that it's there. It's impossible. It's likely impossible that it is there, but it's possible. It's a possibility. So we all just used consciousness, which looks like your mind or yours or yours. You participated in this. I made this suggestion. If we've been in the parking lot, we remember that parking lot. If we haven't, we invent some kind of a parking lot that might be outside the monastery. And we all look at a different kind of basketball, and our speculation or judgment of what that dimension is, if you're really good with measurements, you might have it pretty accurate. You might have it put it right next to a 1951 Chevrolet, which you know the exact size of. But you follow me? I'm being a little silly, but I'm just saying it. The consciousness works that way. It's just has an astonishing ability to respond to forms, to creation. We were talking about that earlier in the White Tower room about using jump writing, or taking something that shows up, looking at it, and completely jumping off from that in the language that was there, which is what? Words, concepts, ideas. But to do that can bring about some fear if you feel like you're about to make a fool of yourself. Yes, sir.
Shokubowing, why does defending not work?
Pardon me?
Why does defending not work?
Defending? Say more. What is it you want to know?
Shokubowing, it seems like there's a knee-jerk reaction to want to defend, and yet it doesn't work, so.
Because what you're defending isn't real. That's a concoction that you believe in consciousness. As soon as it sees defending is not working, then the consciousness goes in and ramps up more paranoia. And uses any kind of language to create anything. And it's not that somebody isn't maybe poking or attacking you, that if you looked at it from, through an attorney or something, isn't saying, yep, he, she, they hurt you or accused you or did whatever. It may make relative truth really, really powerful and strong, enough to lock you up. So if we have all that on our side, then it's going to feel very, very convincing that we're right, they're wrong, or some such a matter in that area. More?
Shokubowing, is this? How do we work with situations without defending?
Without what?
Defending.
Watch the defense. Stop trying to not defend. Be aware of the defense. That's more difficult, because then the ego is really in trouble. When I say in trouble, the ego is starting to come apart. It's starting to seem to be, it looks like a solid thing, and it's starting to crack. Things are coming out, to use more relative images. Don't do anything with it. You see, it's about awareness. As I've said, literally, I know some speculation, but maybe 1,000 times. Long time. Awareness, about awareness. If you try to get a success story, if you try to grab a hold of what you're seeing and stop doing a certain thing, I think I was saying a few minutes ago, I've been accused of being very defensive. Do I defend myself and say, no, I'm not? No, I agree. I am defensive. I'm very aware of it. And I watch myself do that. But I'm not separate from you. That's why I would say, if you want to see me all awake and enlightened and live up to your expectations, wake up yourself. Give me a good example so I can be a good teacher. Am I joking? A little bit. But it's that kind of a dynamic that leads us into an abyss of blaming others. Of thinking that somebody's right and somebody's wrong. There's got to be a right and wrong. No, there doesn't. There's no such thing. There's only a right and wrong if you believe sincerely, completely believe there's a past and a future, and there's not. But if you do, then, well, good luck. Keep going. And if you're on this path, if you're a student of mind, I just say return to the wall. Continue to look at what is happening in the mind without accepting it, belief, without rejecting it, disbelief, without turning away, ignorance. If you do that, you won't see anything, because everything you see is built on passion, aggression, and ignorance, mainly ignorance. What you're ignoring, the completely open dimension with which you've been downloaded into. You're given whiskers. I mean, somebody's really trying to convince you. And you come along and shave them off. Is that goatee experience over with yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Only 2?
Pretty well.
Oh, 3. Okay, go ahead.
Shokubowing, I think several years ago, you said to someone don't defend because it only makes the projection of what the person's coming in your direction with more intense or more real.
Yes, but also I know that maybe you can't help but defend. When I say, don't add, don't subtract, don't divide, don't do the math. So that helps you to see that when you get in and in your mind stream, whether you're on the cushion, you're at the kitchen table or talking to your partner or in your case, your son, you realize that you don't have control. It's just amazing to suddenly see that you've been in, or gradually, maybe it won't be sudden, to gradually see that you're in a labyrinth of consciousness where there is no solid being. There are no other beings. There's consciousness only. And it can show up as a dream. It can show up as a nightmare. Awareness. Realize your true nature. Don't get it from anything but your own consciousness. This is the way I would point to it because that's probably where you should be looking. Don't get it from me. Don't get it from anyone. You may need the teacher to say, look at that. And that look at that might be right in the middle of your chest. Or Ozuku, you have a question?
No. Thank you.
Too bad. But it's because now I gotta listen to Chokatawa. You could have got me out of that trap. But no, you want Chokatawa to give me a hard time. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, can ego get a credential from not defending?
Yes. There's even a classical description of it. It's in the area of pride. And it's a negative kind of pride where, oh no, I'm no one. So yeah, you're right. I'm totally to blame for that situation. I did it, or I don't need anything. Just fine. Very negative form of pride. Very hard to see. Also, someone who is not claiming, but putting himself in a situation of appearing to put others before themselves. But they're not really doing that. They're trying to appear that way. And they won't even know it because someone who's in that situation does not know that's ego. Because they just look at what they're doing, not who they are. They're looking at, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, doing this. I'm saving all beings. If you think you're saving all beings, you're full of shit. Why do you think Bodhidharma frowned all the time? Indigestion. Terrible. Poor guy. Everyone smiled, but Zeb, he didn't smile. Mozuka didn't smile. Let's see who else is totally caught up in their thought patterns. Because that was incredibly funny. Zeb, what are you doing?
Listening to you talk.
Huh?
Listening to you talk.
All right. Mozuku, what are you doing? Respond. Say it. Is this your response? Painful, isn't it? Painful. Find out who you are. So if you wanted to help Mozuku, or you wanted to help me, or you want to help Zeb, train your mind. Don't spend another day turning away from the truth. The truth is right here in each one of you. See it yourself. For as long as I'm alive, I will help you as much as I can. It just may not look like it. Yes.
Wunderbar, how does training our mind help our fellow Sangha member?
You're not separate from them. Fundamentally not separate from anyone anywhere. Fundamentally. You will never particularly have a feeling of being one with everything or all one or together because it is an illusion. So the illusion will continue to persist as an illusion. More?
On to bowing, how can we help a fellow Sangha member swamped with pain? Swamped with the fear of the pain not going away.
Don't agree with them, don't abandon them, don't ignore them. And also don't meddle with them if they would like to have some privacy.
On to bowing, then if we're training our minds, is that all we can do for them?
Yes. It's not that a situation might not arise where you might be a lot more active or participatory in what's happening there, but it needs to come out of your awareness, not out of some kind of scheme to help somebody or appear to others like you're putting them first. It's very difficult. Have more? Anyone who hasn't asked a question or? Jishin, go ahead. I didn't see your mitts in the air.
Can vulnerability be free of suffering?
Again?
Can vulnerability be free of suffering?
The only way, this is we're using words, we're using concepts. The only way that I understand, I'm not saying that some other person much more clear than I am in some way, but I would say that the suffering may come and go dependently arisen. The only thing that I'm seeing that my understanding is telling me that you can participate in anything, whether it's suffering, the end of suffering, the continuation of suffering, the inflation, it's getting worse, it's getting hotter, it's getting colder, it's getting whatever, uncomfortable, that there is no one there. So the differentiation and desire that's arising out on the open plains of the world is going to come and go. The wars and the peace that's go outside our door and everything is at peace. But halfway around the world, people are exploding other people.
Does awareness free us from suffering?
As long as there's a human form, there's going to be pain because of the nerve endings. And as long as there's a human form, there's going to be suffering, but it may not belong to a person. If you're here and you're alive, you're a living being, you may have liberated yourself from the attachment to a self and the attachment to another. But suffering is dependently risen. It's all over the place. And it doesn't belong to anyone. But it shows up in this person or that person. It may show up in you. You do not have a say-so about it. A way that I've talked about it recently is you won't care. When I'm saying, I don't mean it dismissively. I'm saying your understanding of dependent origination is so vast and expansive. Another way of talking about the illusion, which is not even true because it's an illusion. So there is no vastness or expansiveness to it. But the understanding is such that it doesn't look like something's wrong and you need to get rid of something. The Dzogchen masters referred to it as the great perfection. Longchenpa in particular. Everything's exactly perfect as it is. And you or me or all of us trapped in samsara might say, well, what about this? What about what he did? And what about this person's bombing all these people? How about that? How's that the great perfection? That's why it's so damn difficult. It's because you believe those things. We believe that's, and we believe that it's wrong and someone should be corrected or prosecuted. Should they? Maybe. That's culture, society. We have to participate in it. We don't necessarily have to believe it. Yes.
So what is that suffering which is optional. Bowing.
What does the suffering that is? What does-
Their talk title, suffering is optional.
Yes, okay. What is the optional part?
Yes.
The optional part is to see that you're creating the suffering, some of the suffering you're having, the discontinuity or the desperation, to use another D word, that you're having, you're creating it. And you're creating that because that actually gives a hideout of and reaffirms the existence of somebody who's suffering, somebody who's mad, somebody who's been wronged, somebody who's been mistreated, and on and on and on. So you can, what he's basically referring to, as far as I know, I didn't hang out with the Buddha, I didn't talk to him, but listening to that, or reading those words or listening to those words, that's how I would talk about it, as saying, there's the pain of pain, which is inescapable. But lots of forms of difficulty that we call suffering are optional. He's just merely suggesting that if you look at this, you might have to have some suffering, but because you're alive, because you have nerve endings, because you have a toothache. But the other kinds of psychological, mental, and emotional suffering quite often are based on protecting something that is not threatened, an ego, promoting something that is not promotable, an ego. If it's seen, warfare is over. You don't care what happens next, as you've heard me say the last few weeks. There is no next. That's an illusion. There's no past. That's an illusion. But they're extremely powerful and realistic, and we need to work with those, just like the war in Gaza. Or don't call it a war. It's not even, there's no, it's not between two warring armies. It's one group of people attacking and butchering another group of people, to put it very simply. Yes.
Elizabeth Bowing, I want to respond to Ondo's question. She already knew the answer because she's done it too, but you can just bring somebody a tissue. It's very kind.
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things that we can do for our fellow Sangha members is to bring our fellow Sangha members a tissue when we see that they're suffering.
Okay.
Something simple.
I'm grateful to her. She's done that too.
Okay, thank you. Did everyone hear? Okay. I would agree. Shouldn't I get defensive about that? Yes.
When you're bowing, is it possible to misinterpret an appearance as something that it isn't?
Yes.
Ondo Bowing, that reminds me of a part of our Dogen book study today where we were talking about if we have an intention, can we actually harm someone even though our intention is to be with them? So we were talking about be with all things. Can we have that intention to be with all things and yet still end up harming someone?
Probably. Not when we say harm, just make things more difficult for somebody. But it's so, dependent origination is so incredibly complicated that if we try to trace it down and see, oh, this person really wasn't doing that, then you are caught by the labyrinth of right and wrong. There's no way. It's better than that. It's worse than that. It's worse because you cannot fix this. You cannot do the right thing. The intention to be with all things, the intention to save all beings, the intention to put others before yourself might be a series of failures in terms of in your consciousness. Trungpa Rinpoche tried to point that out by talking about the the Kagyu lineage. He actually wrote a book called The Mishap Lineage, where he was talking about, my understanding is that he was endeavoring to talk about how difficult it is to find out how finally we're doing things correctly. Because when you get involved in that, things start to go awry because you're ignoring the very area that you don't have any awareness of, but yet it has an awareness of you. And when I say you, I'm saying the illusion of you, the illusion of a separate being who is deciding this and is deciding against that. Extremely difficult, extremely disheartening, disappointing, and mishap. I remember when he talked about that early in the set. You have more?
What about, can a true teacher harm his students, his or her students?
No,
So everything is a teaching. That a true teacher.
yes, but you have to be careful because the way most people are wired, including the teacher, possibly, even the true teacher, is to think there's a right and a wrong, or should be and shouldn't be. So if you're involved in that, then it's just going to look like if someone says, like if I say yes, I wouldn't necessarily put it on the teacher. I would say if you're a true student, then anything that happens, especially from a teacher, could be received as a teaching. It's not that the teacher, the labyrinth of karma that brought him into the world that even allowed him to be a teacher. You don't just decide to be a Dharma teacher. What is your name?
Path of Grace.
Path of Grace. Does that mean path of how I'm succeeding? Grace is just a way of saying the clouds come together and the clouds part, and here comes the sun. You have no say-so about that. It's not some kind of romantic thing. It's just the truth. So when we say everything the teacher does in the ancient times in Tibet, they would say, whatever the teacher says, that I will do. We don't need that today. I don't say that. I'm just saying that if you're a student and you have a teacher, you might want to consider what the teacher is doing is a teaching, no matter how angry or whatever is showing up, how if you're telling me not to use the word abusive, or how unfair that teacher's acting towards you. A teacher is, if it's a true teacher, when I say they're teaching out of what they see, not out of some kind of personality that needs to look good, some kind of personality that needs to be appreciated as a true teacher and talked about as being so kind and loving, and one of the most wonderful men I've ever met. You follow me, or am I losing myself? More about that if you can do that. It's a very difficult area for me to talk about without promoting something that's going to look like whatever I get to do. You guys just need to eat it. And if you feel that way, I would say this might not be a good area for you to be. I'm not saying that you haven't graduated, that this is graduate school and you're only in the 10th grade. I'm not doing it like that. I'm just saying just the dynamic of this kind of teaching and a particular student, he, she, or they may not be able to work with this. More. Go ahead.
Chokodao bowing. If there is something we're having trouble receiving as a teaching from our teacher, is it important to be genuine or vulnerable and bring that to them, even if it's pretty ugly and painful?
Pretty good idea, if you can. My teachers, I couldn't even do that. I couldn't, when I had any difficulty, they were not available. But they were still teachers, my teachers. But yes, if the teacher is available and I'm fairly available, rather than go and gossip about it, come here. Was there more about what you're asking about?
Chokodao bowing. I think as a student, sometimes there can be a reaction if we think we're being genuine, then there's pushback. Then we think we shouldn't have done that. So I'm trying to reify that as students, we have to get kind of ugly with the teacher sometimes.
You need a teacher.
No, no, can't.
Ask the Densogene. Densogene's right behind you. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's that. What?
Chuck it out, buying. So an example would be if you yelled at me right now, and my genuine response is to yell back.
Mhm.
Is that appropriate?
I think it's appropriate. There's nothing to correct or fix. But if you yell, or if I, as a teacher, somehow think, you're wrong, you shouldn't have done that, or you should have been more respectful, or any of that, then I might not be a true teacher. But in the same way, if you somehow think that what I was doing was somehow wrong, or you go into that, or you get fixated on it. Good area. Good area to contemplate, think about, reflect on. Difficult. Could take maybe one more question for sure, if it's a short one, maybe two. If there are any. Or we can end. Kisho.
Ishwavang, you say that you don't make choices or you don't care what happens. Is that pointing to lack of pain of alternation, Bhavan?
I wouldn't make that claim. I'm always worried about what's gonna happen next. Aren't you? No.
Ishwavang, I do, but you say that you don't care or you don't.
Well, when I said that, I didn't care, but then 10 minutes later, I'm all wrapped up and worry about what's gonna happen next. Nothing lasts. Nothing has a duration at all. It's a teaching that cannot be described or explained, and anytime we go into concepts about it, the minute you try to hang on to a concept about anything, I'm not saying you might not be more comfortable, but you might not get any more teachings either. Come out wherever you are. When I say I don't care, I'm not saying it dismissively, I'm saying that I'm just not concerned about, because I know that this is the situation we're in right this moment. This is right this moment. And 20 years from now, or 10 years, or 10 minutes is still right. It's just this moment. There's no next. That doesn't mean that the example that I often use that doesn't work too well or doesn't show up too well as far as the people that were doing fundraising for the Community Mindfulness Center. I'm saying, please help us, give us money, help us with the Community Mindfulness Center. We've got to raise money. Please, please, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and all that. And then in the next breath, or in a Dharma talk, and I says, it doesn't matter what happens. I said, I don't care if there's a Community Mindfulness Center. I mean, and people say, well, you can't raise funds if you're, and that's a good point. But the intent, I have the intention to it, and the intention you can't stop me. I'm not looking for success. If I'm looking for success, we've had things that you could call failures, but they don't stop this. Ask anybody that works closer to me and see if it stopped me. Is it stopped? I don't see where anything is stopped, but that doesn't mean this whole thing wouldn't not go maybe the way we had envisioned. I have a vision, and that vision, it might be shifting this way and that way, but the fundamental intention there is to build a building, have a building where people who have no interest in Buddhism, never will even come into a monastery, and need to come into a building to sit down, sit still, watch the mind come and go, watch it come and go. And this is what several people, or two people, Milka And since you specifically are doing that, you're still doing that every Tuesday. So I would like to do that every night of the week. Have people, not me necessarily, but monks, people who have been trained, sit down. Watch the movement of the mind. Don't conclude, don't reject, don't add. But use the three poisons without even particularly mentioning Buddhism. Not that that might not come up, but it's not going to be a Buddhist monastery or temple. It's a community mindfulness center. That's my vision. And my intention is to do that. It can't fail because I don't care what happens. I'm saying that all in one huge, gigantic basketball. It's just that. It's just the intention. You can live in that. You can live in your intention. You can live there every day, every minute, every second. Thank you so much.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho Sanji Shivu Shison Musa Hoko Sa Moko the 10 directions of 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. We'll take a 5-minute break to get set up for the evening service.